The moment Leylah Fernandez doubled over on court, clutching her right foot with tears streaming down her face, you could hear the collective gasp from 15,000 fans at the hard courts. What started as a marquee showdown between two of tennis's brightest young stars, Canada's 2021 US Open finalist against America's rising powerhouse Coco Gauff, had devolved into something far more heartbreaking. The 22-year-old from Montreal, who had captivated the tennis world with her fearless shot-making and never-say-die attitude, was now facing every athlete's nightmare, a stress fracture that could derail months of carefully planned preparation. As medical staff rushed onto the court and Gauff approached the net with genuine concern, the question wasn't just about one match result, but about how a single injury can reshape careers, rankings, and the entire landscape of women's tennis. First serve percentages tell the story of competitive tension like nothing else can, and when Leylah Fernandez stepped onto court to face Coco Gauff, her opening service games registered at just 52%, nearly 15 points below her season average of 67%. The Canadian's history with foot injuries creates a psychological shadow that extends far beyond physical limitation, particularly when facing an opponent like Gauff, who represents everything Fernandez once seemed destined to become. The stress fracture that derailed her 2022 season wasn't just a medical setback, it was a career-altering moment that shifted the entire trajectory of women's tennis. The immediate consequences of their encounter extend far beyond a single match result. With Gauff seated in the top 5 and Fernandez fighting to maintain her position inside the top 25, the ranking points differential creates enormous pressure. A loss for Fernandez means missing out on potentially 190 ranking points that could propel her back into the top 15 for the first time since early 2023. The business implications prove equally stark. Fernandez's endorsement portfolio with Wilson Rackets and Adidas apparel depends heavily on maintaining visibility in marquee television slots, the kind that matches against top opponents' guarantee. When ESPN's worldwide audience peaked at 1.2 million viewers during their previous meeting, it demonstrated the commercial value these matchups generate. Tennis Canada's investment in Fernandez exceeds $3.2 million annually when combining direct support, coaching staff, and travel expenses. That financial commitment requires results that justify continued backing, especially as younger Canadian talents emerge through the junior system. The pressure extends beyond individual achievement to representing an entire nation's tennis aspirations and development funding. The psychological weight of competing while managing injury concerns creates layers of complexity most fans never consider. Fernandez's breakthrough moment during that magical 2021 US Open run, where she defeated former world number ones and Grand Slam champions en route to the final, established expectations that her subsequent injury struggles have made difficult to meet. That tournament run generated an estimated $15 million in increased sponsorship revenue for Tennis Canada and positioned Fernandez as the face of Canadian tennis alongside Bianca Andreescu. Yet while Gauff has consolidated her success with consistent top 10 rankings and a US Open title, Fernandez has battled through setbacks that prevented similar career momentum. The contrast in their trajectories since that shared breakthrough period illustrates how quickly professional tennis fortunes can shift. Where Gauff's serve has evolved into a weapon averaging 108 miles per hour on first serves with a 73% success rate this season, Fernandez has had to rebuild her movement patterns and court coverage from fundamental levels. The numbers reveal the challenge's scope. In 2022, before her significant injury, Fernandez converted 43% of her breakpoint opportunities. This season, that figure has dropped to 31%, suggesting ongoing challenges with decisive moments that require explosive movement and confidence under pressure. The technical adjustments required when managing physical concerns create tactical compromises that ripple through every aspect of her game. Sports science data from biomechanics partnerships shows that players returning from foot fractures typically favor their uninjured leg by an average of 8 to 12 degrees during lateral movement, creating compensation patterns that affect serve power and court coverage. For Fernandez, whose defensive game relies on exceptional court coverage and the ability to turn defense into attack, any reduction in mobility fundamentally alters her tactical approach. Against Gauff's aggressive baseline game, which generates an average of 28 winners per match this season, defensive versatility becomes paramount. Television broadcasters structure their coverage around compelling narratives, and the Fernandez-Gauff dynamic provides exactly that storytelling gold. Their head-to-head encounters feature momentum swings that keep viewers engaged through multiple sets, with their matches consistently rating 35% higher than average WTA programming for European audiences. This translates to increased advertising revenue and justifies the substantial broadcast rights investments that fund tour-level prize money. The human element beneath commercial considerations makes tennis uniquely compelling. Fernandez's emotional investment reflects not just professional ambition, but the desire to validate years of sacrifice and rehabilitation. Her team's medical expenses exceeded $180,000 during recovery periods, covering specialized physiotherapy to biomechanical analysis. That financial commitment represents more than medical care. It's an investment in the belief that championship-level tennis remains achievable. Match preparation becomes exponentially more complex when carrying the mental burden of previous injury. The traditional aggressive return position that made Fernandez dangerous during her breakthrough, standing inside the baseline to pressure opponents' second serves, has been modified to reduce explosive first-step movement. This tactical compromise allows opponents like Gauff additional time to set up points, fundamentally altering the strategic dynamics that create opportunities. The technical modifications extend through her entire game structure. Serve placement has shifted toward consistency over power, with her average first serve speed dropping from 102 miles per hour to 97 miles per hour this season. The change prioritizes keeping points neutral rather than seeking immediate advantage, reflecting both physical limitation and strategic adaptation. Against Gauff's improved return game, which now ranks 4th on tour in breakpoint conversion at 47%, every service game becomes a tactical chess match. Recovery patterns between points have also required adjustment. Where Fernandez previously used quick movement between points to maintain rhythm and pressure opponents, she now takes additional time to ensure proper foot positioning and balance. These seemingly minor modifications accumulate over 3-set matches, affecting everything from energy management to psychological momentum. The crowd's reaction to visible discomfort or hesitation creates additional pressure that compounds physical challenges. Fernandez's coaching team has implemented innovative training methods to compensate for reduced explosive movement. Court positioning drills emphasize anticipation over reaction speed, allowing her to maintain effective defense despite mobility concerns. The approach requires exceptional tactical intelligence, reading opponents' patterns earlier to position optimally. Against Gauff's evolving all-court game, which now includes 15% more net approaches than last season, courtcraft becomes even more critical. The financial implications of extended injury management reach beyond immediate medical costs. Prize money earnings dropped from $1.8 million in 2022 to $847,000 in 2023. 2023, directly impacting her team's budget for specialized coaching and support staff. Endorsement bonuses tied to ranking position and tournament results create additional pressure to return quickly rather than allowing complete recovery. The balance between short-term results and long-term career health represents one of professional tennis's most challenging decisions. The WTA ranking system operates with mathematical precision that makes every match result consequential, but when a player of Fernandez's caliber faces extended absence due to injury, the ripple effects extend far beyond individual standings. Currently positioned at world number 25, Fernandez sits precariously close to the seeding cutoff for major tournaments, where the difference between being seeded 16th or unseeded can determine facing a top player in the first round versus the 4th round. Her current ranking points total of 1,847 requires consistent quarterfinal and semifinal results to maintain, but foot injuries create uncertainty that makes such consistency nearly impossible to guarantee. The immediate tournament implications prove substantial when examining prize money distribution. A second-round exit costs Fernandez approximately $85,000 in prize money compared to reaching the quarterfinals, while also sacrificing 90 ranking points that could secure more favorable draws in future events. These numbers compound rapidly across a full season. In 2023, the difference between finishing ranked 15th versus 30th represented $340,000 in year-end bonus payments from the WTA's player benefit programs, not including the enhanced appearance fees that higher-ranked players command at smaller tournaments. For the WTA Tour itself, losing marquee matchups like Fernandez versus Gauff creates programming challenges that affect broadcast negotiations worldwide. Tennis Channel's viewership data shows that matches featuring both players generate 42% higher ratings than the tour average, translating to approximately $2.8 million in additional advertising revenue per tournament when they both reach later rounds. When injury forces early withdrawals or retirements, broadcasters must restructure their featured programming, often moving less compelling matches into prime television slots that command premium advertising rates. The sponsorship ecosystem surrounding both players demonstrates tennis's interconnected financial structure. Fernandez's current deal with Adidas includes performance bonuses tied to reaching specific rounds at designated tournaments, with Grand Slam semi-final appearances triggering six-figure bonus payments. Extended injury absence doesn't just eliminate these opportunities, it can invoke contract clauses that reduce base compensation when ranking or appearance thresholds aren't met. Her racket sponsor Wilson invested heavily in signature equipment development based on her 2021 breakthrough, with marketing campaigns built around her aggressive playing style that injury concerns now complicate. Gauff's perspective on facing an injured opponent creates its own set of pressures and opportunities. Currently ranked 4th in the world with $4.2 million in prize money this season, she needs quality wins against top 25 opponents to maintain her position ahead of the year-end championships. However, victories against injured opponents carry less ranking value and can appear less impressive to tournament directors making wildcard decisions. The tactical advantage of facing a mobility-limited opponent must be balanced against the reduced satisfaction and competitive value such wins provide. The broader implications for North American tennis development reveal how individual success stories drive institutional investment. Tennis Canada's annual budget of $28 million includes substantial allocations based on having internationally competitive players who justify government sports funding and corporate partnerships. Fernandez's success directly impacts funding for junior development programs across the country, with her U.S. Open final appearance generating enough visibility to secure a 5-year, $12 million partnership with Rogers Communications for facility development and coaching education. When examining attendance figures, matches featuring injured or compromised players create interesting economic dynamics. Tournament directors report that ticket sales for Fernandez matches remain strong despite injury concerns, with her emotional playing style and comeback narrative proving attractive to casual fans. However, corporate hospitality sales, which generate higher profit margins, show more sensitivity to competitive quality. Premium ticket holders expect compelling tennis that injured players may not consistently deliver, affecting the corporate partnerships that fund tour development. The medical infrastructure surrounding professional tennis has evolved significantly since Fernandez's initial injury struggles. The WTA's partnership with leading sports medicine institutes now provides real-time injury monitoring through wearable technology that tracks everything from stride length to landing force distribution. This data helps predict injury risk and optimize training loads, but also creates additional pressure when biomarker data suggests elevated risk levels that could affect tournament participation decisions. Prize money structures at different tournament levels create complex decision-making scenarios for injured players. While Grand Slam first-round prize money of $75,000 provides significant financial incentive to compete despite discomfort, smaller WTA 250 events offering $12,000 for first-round exits may not justify the injury risk. Fernandez's team must constantly evaluate whether tournament participation accelerates or delays full recovery, with each decision affecting not just immediate earnings, but long-term career trajectory. The psychological impact on opponents facing potentially injured players introduces tactical and ethical considerations that rarely receive public discussion. Gauff's aggressive baseline game becomes more effective against mobility-limited opponents. But the satisfaction of such victories can feel hollow. Professional competitors want to beat opponents at full strength, both for personal validation and public perception. Wins against injured players, regardless of official acknowledgement of the injury, carry less weight in legacy discussions and year-end award considerations. Television production adapts to injury storylines by increasing medical timeout coverage and incorporating more commentary about physical challenges players face. This editorial decision serves multiple purposes. It educates viewers about tennis's physical demands, creates dramatic tension around uncertain outcomes, and potentially generates sympathy that translates to increased fan engagement. However, excessive focus on injury concerns can overshadow the tactical and technical excellence that makes matches compelling beyond pure drama. The insurance considerations surrounding professional tennis create another layer of complexity when injuries affect high-profile matches. Tournament insurance policies must account for reduced ticket sales and television value when marquee players withdraw or compete below full capacity. These policies' premiums reflect the statistical reality that tennis injuries occur frequently enough to significantly impact event profitability, with costs ultimately passed through to all tour participants via tournament fees and reduced prize money pools. International tennis development programs monitor North American success stories closely, with Fernandez's breakthrough inspiring increased investment across multiple countries. Her injury struggles provide cautionary lessons about balancing immediate results with long-term athlete development, particularly regarding junior tournament schedules that may contribute to overuse injuries. The Canadian model of centralizing training and medical support while maintaining regional development programs has influenced policy discussions in Europe and Asia, where federations seek to replicate breakthrough success stories. The history of foot injuries in professional tennis reads like a cautionary tale of careers interrupted, with some stories ending in triumphant comebacks, while others serve as reminders of the sport's unforgiving physical demands. When we examine Fernandez's situation against this historical backdrop, the patterns reveal both reasons for optimism and cause for concern. Rafael Nadal's chronic foot condition, diagnosed as Müller-Weiss syndrome, forced him to develop an entirely different movement pattern that actually enhanced his clay court dominance, demonstrating how adaptation can sometimes lead to improved performance. His career prize money exceeded $134 million, despite, or perhaps partly because of, the tactical adjustments his foot problems necessitated. Serena Williams faced her own foot fracture crisis in 2010, suffering a stress fracture that kept her away from competition for nearly 11 months and dropped her ranking from number 1 to number 175. The financial impact proved staggering. She lost an estimated $15 million in prize money and endorsement bonuses during her absence, while Nike had to restructure marketing campaigns built around her dominance. However, her return produced some of the most dominant tennis of her career, including 4 Grand Slam titles after age 30, proving that proper rehabilitation can extend rather than shorten elite careers. The contrast between Fernandez's injury timeline and that of other young stars reveals important patterns about recovery at different career stages. When Ashley Barty suffered her hip injury in 2018 at age 22, similar to Fernandez's current age, she took a complete break from competition that many criticized as career suicide. Instead, that physical and mental recovery period preceded the most successful phase of her career, culminating in 3 Grand Slam titles and the world #1 ranking. Her prize money earnings in the 3 years following her extended break totaled $8.2 million, compared to $1.8 million in the 3 years preceding her injury. Maria Sharapova's shoulder injury saga provides perhaps the most relevant comparison to Fernandez's situation, as both players built their games around aggressive shot-making that places enormous stress on specific body parts. Sharapova's serve speed dropped from an average of 118 miles per hour to 104 miles per hour following her shoulder surgery, forcing a complete tactical overhaul that initially frustrated fans and commentators. However, her adjusted game produced 2 Grand Slam titles and $22 million in prize money after the injury, demonstrating that perceived limitations can become strategic advantages when properly leveraged. The statistical reality of foot injury recovery in professional tennis shows encouraging trends for players who commit to complete rehabilitation. A comprehensive study of WTA players who suffered stress fractures between 2018 and 2022 found that 73% returned to within 10 ranking positions of their pre-injury peak within 18 months. More significantly, players who took longer initial recovery periods, averaging 8 months versus 5 months, showed 34% better long-term outcomes in terms of ranking stability and career longevity. These numbers suggest that patience during recovery correlates strongly with sustained success. Caroline Wozniacki's injury management throughout her career offers tactical lessons particularly relevant to Fernandez's situation. Never possessing overwhelming power, Wozniacki built her game around court coverage and defensive consistency that required exceptional foot speed and lateral movement. When ankle and foot issues began affecting her mobility in 2016, she worked with biomechanics experts to develop more efficient movement patterns that reduced stress while maintaining effectiveness. Her prize money earnings in 2017 and 2018, totaling $4.7 million despite reduced mobility, exceeded her 2015 and 2016 earnings by 23%. The evolution of sports medicine since earlier injury cases provides Fernandez advantages that previous generations couldn't access. Modern recovery protocols incorporate everything from anti-gravity treadmill training to personalized nutrition plans based on genetic testing. The total investment in Fernandez's recovery program, estimated at $285,000, including specialized equipment and expert consultations, represents a fraction of her potential career earnings, but provides access to techniques that have improved recovery success rates by an average of 31% since 2015. Comparing Fernandez's injury to those of other aggressive baseline players reveals interesting tactical parallels. Simona Halep's Achilles and calf injuries in 2021 forced similar modifications to her movement patterns, initially resulting in a ranking drop from number 2 to number 15. However, her adjusted game emphasized early ball striking and court positioning over pure speed, leading to more efficient point construction that actually improved her win percentage against top 10 opponents from 64% to 71% following her return. The financial implications of injury recovery vary significantly based on career timing and ranking position. When Petra Kvitova suffered her hand injury in late 2016, she was ranked 11th with established endorsement deals that continued during her absence. Her sponsors, including Nike and Wilson, maintained full contract terms during her 6-month recovery, recognizing her long-term value. Fernandez's current ranking and contract structures provide similar stability, with Adidas and Wilson continuing their partnerships despite her injury-related ranking fluctuations. Historical precedent also demonstrates the importance of mental approach during injury recovery. Victoria Azarenka's extended absence due to various injuries and personal circumstances between 2016 and 2019 resulted in a ranking drop from number 1 to outside the top 100. However, her return strategy focused on gradual tournament entry and realistic expectations, ultimately leading to Grand Slam final appearances and year-end championship qualification. Her total prize money following her return exceeded $3.8 million, proving that careers can be rebuilt even after extended absences. The tactical adjustments required by foot injuries often force players to develop aspects of their game that were previously underdeveloped. Fernandez's naturally aggressive style, which relied heavily on quick court coverage and explosive movement, now requires greater emphasis on shot placement and tactical awareness. Historical examples suggest this evolution can improve overall game sophistication. Justine Henin's back and elbow injuries forced her to rely more heavily on tactical intelligence rather than physical attributes, leading to some of the most strategically brilliant tennis in women's history. Recovery timeline comparisons reveal significant variations based on injury severity and individual healing rates. Sloane Stephens' foot injury in 2017 required 11 months of recovery but preceded her US Open championship and $5.9 million in prize money the following year. Her case demonstrates that extended recovery periods, while financially challenging in the short term, can provide the foundation for peak performance when players return fully healthy rather than partially recovered. The psychological aspects of returning from foot injuries show remarkable consistency across different players and eras. Initial tournaments following comeback typically feature tentative movement and conservative shot selection, regardless of the player's pre-injury style. Fernandez's early return matches displayed similar patterns, with her first serve percentage increasing but average serve speed decreasing as she prioritized consistency over aggression. This tactical conservatism historically diminishes as confidence returns, usually requiring 6 to 8 competitive matches before players regain their pre-injury tactical boldness. The evolution of training methods has dramatically improved injury prevention and recovery outcomes since earlier cases. Modern players utilize force plate analysis to identify movement imbalances before they become problematic, while recovery protocols incorporate everything from cryotherapy to hyperbaric oxygen treatment. These advances help explain why recent injury recovery success rates exceed historical averages by significant margins, providing optimism for current cases like Fernandez's situation. The global tennis ecosystem operates as an intricate web of financial relationships, where individual player success or failure creates ripple effects that extend far beyond tournament results and ranking positions. When examining Fernandez's injury situation within this broader context, the implications reach into corporate boardrooms in New York, television production studios in London, and tennis facility development meetings in Montreal. The modern sports entertainment industry has evolved into a sophisticated machine where athlete storylines drive content creation and injury narratives particularly captivate audiences seeking authentic human drama amid increasingly polished professional presentations. Fernandez's endorsement portfolio with Adidas represents more than traditional athlete sponsorship. It functions as a comprehensive lifestyle brand partnership valued at approximately $2.8 million annually, including performance bonuses and appearance fees. The German sportswear giant invested heavily in her signature apparel line following her US Open final appearance, with initial production runs of 50,000 units selling out within 6 weeks across North American markets. However, injury concerns complicate marketing narratives that depend on consistent high-level performance and media visibility. Adidas executives must now balance supporting an injured athlete against maximizing return on marketing investments, particularly as competitor brands like Nike aggressively pursue emerging talents who can guarantee consistent tournament appearances. Wilson's racket partnership with Fernandez demonstrates how equipment companies structure deals around both current performance and projected career trajectory. The initial 5-year contract, worth $1.6 million guaranteed, includes escalation clauses that increase compensation based on ranking thresholds and Grand Slam results. More significantly, Wilson invested $380,000 in developing signature racket specifications tailored to her aggressive playing style, with manufacturing processes optimized for the specific string tensions and balance points her game requires. Extended injury absence doesn't just reduce her promotional value, it potentially makes specialized equipment development financially unsustainable if her playing style changes substantially during recovery. Television broadcasting rights negotiations increasingly factor in star power and narrative appeal when valuing tournament packages. ESPN's current WTA deal, worth $180 million over 5 years, includes specific provisions for featuring marquee players during prime broadcasting windows. Fernandez's matches consistently generate 28% higher viewership than tour averages, translating to approximately $340,000 in additional advertising revenue per featured match. Her injury concerns create programming challenges that extend beyond single tournaments, as broadcasters must restructure seasonal narrative arcs built around anticipated player matchups and rivalry development. The emergence of streaming platforms has fundamentally altered how tennis content reaches global audiences, with injury storylines proving particularly compelling for digital engagement metrics. Tennis Channel's streaming service reports that matches featuring players returning from injury generate 45% more social media engagement than standard tournament coverage, with comment volumes and sharing rates significantly exceeding baseline levels. This engagement translates directly to subscriber retention and premium advertising rates, making injured players paradoxically valuable for content creation, even when their competitive level may be compromised. Corporate hospitality represents tennis tournaments' highest margin revenue stream, with premium packages selling for $15,000 to $25,000 at major events when marquee players participate. Fernandez's drawing power in North American markets makes her presence crucial for corporate sales. particularly among Canadian companies seeking entertainment opportunities for international clients. Her injury status creates sales challenges 6 months in advance, as corporate buyers require certainty about player participation when making hospitality investments that represent significant marketing expenditures. The Canadian government's investment in tennis development through Sport Canada funding directly correlates with international success stories like Fernandez's breakthrough achievements. Her U.S. Open final appearance triggered a $4.2 million increase in federal tennis funding over 3 years, supporting everything from facility construction to junior coaching education. This investment strategy depends on maintaining internationally competitive athletes who justify continued government support against competing sports and social programs. Extended injury absence doesn't just affect individual career trajectories, it influences national sports policy decisions that impact thousands of developing players. Social media monetization has evolved into a sophisticated revenue stream that injury narratives can either enhance or diminish, depending on execution and timing. Fernandez's Instagram account, with 847,000 followers, generates an estimated $35,000 per sponsored post when she maintains regular competitive activity. However, injury recovery content often performs better in terms of engagement rates, with posts about rehabilitation and comeback preparation averaging 73% more likes and comments than standard tournament coverage. This engagement paradox means injury periods can actually enhance long-term social media value while reducing immediate tournament-based earning potential. The growth of women's tennis in Asian markets creates additional pressure for star players to maintain consistent tournament schedules and media presence. China's tennis market, valued at $2.8 billion annually, depends heavily on international stars competing in domestic tournaments that drive television viewership and facility development. Fernandez's popularity in Asian markets, demonstrated by 340,000 Weibo followers and consistent sellout crowds at Asian tournaments, makes her injury status relevant to tournament directors' bottom lines thousands of miles from North American courts. Appearance fee negotiations at smaller tournaments reveal how injury history affects player market value in ways that ranking points don't fully capture. Tournament directors at WTA 250 and 500 events budget appearance fees based on projected ticket sales and media coverage rather than current ranking positions. Fernandez's ability to command $45,000 appearance fees, despite ranking outside the top 20, reflects her entertainment value and fan connection, but injury concerns create negotiation leverage issues that can reduce these payments by 15% to 25% when tournament directors perceive withdrawal risks. The insurance industry's involvement in professional tennis has expanded dramatically as prize money and endorsement values have grown. Fernandez's injury insurance policy, estimated at $125,000 annually in premiums, covers lost prize money and endorsement bonuses during extended absences. However, these policies include specific exclusions for pre-existing conditions and require detailed medical documentation that can complicate return-to-play decisions. The intersection of medical advice, insurance requirements, and competitive desires creates complex decision-making scenarios that affect not just individual athletes, but entire support team employment situations. Tennis facility development across Canada increasingly depends on success story inspiration that drives participation growth and membership sales. Fernandez's breakthrough achievements contributed to a 23% increase in junior tennis participation nationwide, translating to approximately $18 million in facility revenue growth and 340 new full-time coaching positions. The Tennis Canada facilities that invested in expansion based on this growth now face potential membership declines if her career trajectory changes significantly due to ongoing injury management challenges. The evolution of sports analytics and data collection has created new revenue streams around player performance metrics that injury situations complicate. Companies like TennisBot and CourtVision pay licensing fees to access match data that feeds predictive models used in sports betting and fantasy tennis platforms. Fernandez's injury history creates data inconsistency that affects algorithmic predictions, potentially reducing the licensing value of her performance information while simultaneously making her matches more unpredictable and interesting for betting markets that thrive on uncertainty. Retail sales of tennis equipment and apparel show direct correlation with star player visibility and success, particularly in markets where specific players have strong regional connections. Canadian tennis equipment sales spiked 34% following Fernandez's US Open run, with Wilson racket sales in her specifications increasing by 180% across Canadian retailers. Sporting goods stores now stock inventory based partly on anticipated player performance, making injury management decisions relevant to retail supply chain planning and regional sales forecasting that extends far beyond professional tennis circles. The mathematics of professional tennis rankings create a zero-sum environment where every point gained or lost reverberates through the entire competitive landscape. And Fernandez's injury-related absence opens opportunities that could reshape the tour's hierarchy for years to come. Currently positioned at world number 25 with 1,847 ranking points, her potential slide during recovery creates advancement possibilities for players ranked between 26th and 40th who are desperately seeking breakthrough moments. The WTA's 52-week rolling ranking system means that defending points from previous seasons becomes increasingly difficult when tournament participation remains uncertain, creating a mathematical spiral that can drop players precipitously regardless of their actual competitive level when healthy. The immediate seeding implications for upcoming Grand Slams demonstrate how individual injury situations affect tournament dynamics on massive scales. If Fernandez drops below the top 32 by the Australian Open entry deadline, it shifts the entire seeding structure and creates more favorable pathways for other players. A former Grand Slam finalist becoming unseeded means that top seeds could potentially face her as early as the first round, fundamentally altering championship odds and betting markets. These changes ripple through corporate hospitality sales, television programming decisions, and media credential allocations that depend on predictable star matchups in later tournament rounds. Gauff's trajectory toward year-end #1 ranking becomes significantly easier with fewer quality opponents capable of defeating her consistently. The American's current points total of 6,847 positions her perfectly to capitalize on any extended absences by other top players, but her legacy ultimately depends on beating healthy opponents at peak performance levels. Victory margins against injured or compromised players carry less historical weight, creating a complex situation where short-term ranking gains might diminish long-term competitive credibility. The year-end championships in Saudi Arabia, with their $15 million total prize money pool, represent the season's ultimate measurement of sustained excellence rather than opportunistic advancement. The Canadian tennis development pipeline faces critical decisions about resource allocation if Fernandez's career trajectory changes substantially. Tennis Canada's current budget of $28 million annually includes significant investments in her support team, training facilities, and travel expenses that could potentially be redirected toward emerging talents like Rebecca Marino or Leylah Fernandez's younger competitors. The opportunity cost of maintaining extensive support for an injury-prone veteran versus developing multiple promising juniors creates strategic decisions that will influence Canadian tennis competitiveness for the next decade. Prize money projections for 2026 and 2027 show how ranking position affects career earnings in ways that compound rapidly over time. The difference between maintaining top 20 ranking versus sliding to 40th represents approximately $850,000 annually in prize money expectations, not including the appearance fees and endorsement bonuses tied to ranking thresholds. Fernandez's career earnings currently total $4.6 million, but projections based on injury-free competition suggested potential lifetime earnings exceeding $15 million. Extended recovery periods don't just delay earning potential, they permanently reduce career totals due to tennis's age-related performance decline that typically begins around age 28. The tactical evolution of women's tennis increasingly favors players who can adapt their games mid-career, suggesting that Fernandez's injury-forced modifications might actually enhance her long-term prospects if properly implemented. The modern tour features fewer pure power players and more tactical adaptability, with champions like Ashley Barty and Simona Halep proving that courtcraft can overcome physical limitations. Fernandez's naturally high tennis intelligence, demonstrated by her ability to defeat higher-ranked opponents through strategic shot-making, provides foundation for game evolution that could extend her competitive peak beyond typical age-related decline patterns. The emergence of younger Canadian talents creates both pressure and opportunity for Fernandez's comeback timeline. Players like Eugenie Bouchard's resurgence and Marina Stakusic's junior success demonstrate that Canadian tennis depth extends beyond individual stars, potentially reducing pressure for immediate return while increasing long-term competition for federation resources. The Tennis Canada model of centralized development means that successful rehabilitation could position Fernandez as a mentor figure whose experience benefits the entire program, adding value beyond personal competitive achievements. Endorsement contract negotiations scheduled for 2025 and 2026 will heavily factor injury history and recovery success into valuations that could define Fernandez's financial security for the remainder of her career. Adidas and Wilson contracts include renewal options based on ranking position and tournament participation that could significantly reduce compensation if injury concerns persist. However, successful comeback narratives often generate premium marketing value that can offset reduced competitive performance, as demonstrated by endorsement deals for players like Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova following their major injury recoveries. The broadcast landscape evolution towards streaming and social media content creates new opportunities for athletes during injury recovery periods that didn't exist for previous generations. Fernandez's potential participation in exhibition matches, coaching clinics, or tennis commentary could maintain income and visibility while reducing competitive pressure during rehabilitation. Tennis Channel and ESPN increasingly feature injured players in studio roles, with compensation rates of $25,000 to $50,000 per event that could partially offset tournament earning losses while building media skills valuable for post-competitive careers. Grand Slam seeding scenarios for the next 2 years show how Fernandez's situation affects not just her own championship prospects, but the entire competitive balance of major tournaments. Her absence from seeded positions creates advancement opportunities for players ranked in the 20s and 30s who could potentially reach quarterfinals and semifinals through more favorable draws. These breakthrough results generate ranking points and prize money that elevate entire career trajectories, demonstrating how individual injury situations create cascading effects throughout the professional tennis ecosystem. The psychological impact on other injury-prone players throughout the tour cannot be underestimated, as Fernandez's recovery success or failure influences medical decision-making and risk tolerance across multiple careers. Young players facing similar injury concerns look to established stars for guidance about rehabilitation timelines and return strategies, making her choices influential beyond personal consequences. The tour's overall injury management culture evolves based on high-profile case studies that demonstrate successful approaches or cautionary examples. Regional tournament scheduling in North America increasingly depends on star player participation to justify television coverage and corporate sponsorship investments. Fernandez's uncertain availability affects planning decisions for events from Indian Wells to the US Open that budget marketing campaigns around anticipated storylines. Tournament directors must balance featuring injured players whose participation remains questionable against promoting more reliable competitors who lack equivalent star power and fan connection. The development of sports medicine protocols and injury prevention programs across professional tennis will partially depend on how effectively Fernandez's case demonstrates current rehabilitation techniques. Her recovery process becomes a case study that influences medical approaches for future injury situations, potentially benefiting countless players if successful techniques can be identified and replicated. The investment in her rehabilitation, estimated at $285,000 including specialized equipment and expert consultations, represents research and development that could improve outcomes for the entire sport. Long-term legacy considerations reveal how injury management decisions made now will influence historical assessment of Fernandez's career achievements and potential. The difference between a career remembered for unfulfilled potential due to injury versus one celebrated for successful adaptation and longevity depends entirely on choices made during current recovery periods. Tennis history suggests that players who prioritize long-term health over short-term results often achieve greater ultimate success. But the financial pressures of professional competition make such patience increasingly difficult to maintain in modern circumstances. The intersection of athletic ambition and physical reality creates one of sport's most compelling and heartbreaking narratives, where the very qualities that elevate athletes to elite levels, relentless competitive drive, willingness to push through pain, refusal to accept limitations, can ultimately undermine the longevity they desperately seek. Fernandez's situation crystallizes this fundamental tension in ways that extend far beyond individual career considerations, representing broader questions about how professional tennis balances immediate entertainment value against athlete welfare, and whether the sport's current structure adequately supports players through the inevitable physical challenges that define every elite career. The financial architecture of professional tennis creates systematic pressure for premature returns that no amount of medical advice can fully counteract. When appearance fees, ranking bonuses, and endorsement payments depend on consistent tournament participation, the economic reality of extended recovery becomes a luxury that many players simply cannot afford. Fernandez's relatively secure financial position, with career earnings exceeding $4.6 million and multi-year endorsement deals, actually places her among the fortunate minority who can theoretically prioritize health over immediate earnings. Yet even her situation demonstrates how quickly financial pressures accumulate when tournament participation becomes uncertain. The evolution of sports medicine has provided athletes with unprecedented knowledge about injury mechanics and recovery protocols, but this information paradoxically increases decision-making complexity rather than simplifying it. When biomechanical analysis reveals that certain movement patterns increase re-injury risk by 23%, but modifying those patterns reduces competitive effectiveness by an estimated 15%, the choice between health and performance becomes a mathematical optimization problem with no clear solution. Fernandez's team must constantly balance competing medical recommendations, performance requirements, and career timeline pressures that previous generations of players never faced. The broader implications for women's tennis development suggest that injury management approaches pioneered by current stars will influence how future generations approach career longevity and peak performance timing. If Fernandez demonstrates that extended recovery periods and tactical adaptation can produce sustained success, it could encourage more conservative injury management across the tour. Conversely, if aggressive return timelines prove more effective for maintaining ranking position and earning potential, the precedent could pressure other injured players toward risky decisions that prioritize short-term results over long-term health. The psychological dimension of injury recovery in individual sports creates isolation that team sport athletes rarely experience, where success and failure rest entirely on personal decisions without the support structure and shared responsibility that team environments provide. Fernandez's recovery process occurs under constant public scrutiny, with every training session and tournament appearance analyzed for signs of full recovery or lingering limitation. This visibility adds psychological pressure that can actually impede physical healing, creating feedback loops where mental stress exacerbates physical symptoms in ways that purely medical approaches struggle to address. The global nature of professional tennis means that injury decisions made in North American training facilities affect tournament operations in Asia, television programming in Europe, and grassroots development funding in South America. When a player of Fernandez's international appeal faces extended absence, the ripple effects reach into boardrooms and policy meetings where her name might never be mentioned, but her absence influences resource allocation decisions that impact thousands of other players and tennis facilities worldwide. The emergence of alternative competitive formats, from exhibition matches to team-based leagues, creates recovery pathway options that didn't exist for previous generations dealing with similar injury challenges. Fernandez could potentially maintain competitive activity and earning potential through formats that reduce physical stress while preserving the tactical sharpness necessary for eventual tour return. These opportunities represent evolution in professional tennis that acknowledges the reality of injury while creating sustainable career pathways for athletes managing physical limitations. The technological advancement in injury prevention and recovery suggests that current injury management challenges may seem primitive within a decade, as genetic testing, artificial intelligence, and personalized medicine create increasingly sophisticated approaches to athletic development and rehabilitation. Fernandez's recovery process utilizes cutting-edge techniques that were unavailable to players just 5 years ago, but the rapid pace of medical advancement means that future injury cases will have access to approaches currently in research phases that could revolutionize recovery timelines and success rates. Yet beneath all the medical analysis, financial calculations, and strategic considerations lies the fundamental human reality that professional athletes face: the knowledge that their competitive careers exist within narrow time windows that injury can dramatically shorten or redirect. Fernandez, at age 22, theoretically has 6 to 8 years remaining at peak competitive level, but foot injuries can accelerate physical decline in ways that make such projections meaningless. The courage required to continue competing, while knowing that each match could potentially be career-ending, represents a psychological burden that few outside professional sports can truly comprehend. The ultimate measurement of successful injury management in professional tennis extends beyond ranking points, prize money, or championship titles to encompass the athlete's post-competitive quality of life and relationship with the sport that defined their identity for decades. Players who manage injury situations thoughtfully often transition more successfully to coaching, commentary, or business roles that utilize their tennis expertise while preserving physical health. Those who sacrifice long-term health for short-term competitive results frequently face decades of physical consequences that no championship trophy can adequately compensate. The questions surrounding Fernandez's situation ultimately reflect broader societal debates about work-life balance, risk tolerance, and the price of excellence that extend far beyond professional tennis. In an era where career longevity increasingly depends on sustainable approaches to high-performance demands, her choices could influence not just tennis culture, but athletic development across multiple sports. The tension between maximizing genetic gifts through aggressive competition versus preserving health for long-term well-being represents one of modern sport's fundamental philosophical challenges. As fans and observers, we must grapple with our own role in creating the pressure that influences these decisions. The demand for entertainment, comeback narratives, and heroic performances creates market forces that push athletes toward choices they might not make in purely personal contexts. When ticket sales, television ratings, and social media engagement depend partly on watching athletes compete through adversity, we become implicit participants in the risk-benefit calculations that define their careers. The question becomes whether we can maintain our emotional investment in competitive excellence while supporting athlete welfare, even when it conflicts with our desire for immediate entertainment. The resolution of Fernandez's injury situation will ultimately provide just one data point in the ongoing evolution of professional tennis. But it represents broader questions that the sport must address as medical knowledge advances and athlete advocacy becomes more sophisticated. Can the tour structure adapt to better support players through inevitable injury challenges? Will future stars learn from current examples to make more informed decisions about career management? And perhaps most importantly, can we as fans evolve our expectations to value athlete welfare alongside competitive achievement, creating sustainable conditions for the sport we love to thrive without sacrificing the people who make it possible?